Hey guys, last time our objective in class was to understand lifestyle disease and then also understand what the difference between controllable choices were and uncontrollable risk factors, so things that you have no control over and how they relate to deaths from a long time ago compared to what's going on now and how that relates to us. So we'll jump right into today. Our objective is to know the leading cause of death for teenagers and all ages, as you see down here below, and how the six components of health, which we'll talk about later, how those actually impact each other. So jumping right in, what we're going to do is we're going to click on this link. It's leading cause of death. It's a great resource. So I'll open this up. And the first thing that it's going to do is it's going to have it already identified over in 35 to 44. We're going to change that because that's not what we're looking at. So I'm going to put it over here at 15 to 24. And it's going to actually tell you over here on the left-hand side what the leading causes of death are. It actually ranks them all the way down. It tells you how many deaths happened as a result of those in the United States last year, so or in the last 365 days. So you can see motor vehicle accidents or road traffic accidents, 2,000. So almost double what's next, which is actually poisonings and then suicide. So, and you can kind of go down there, you can see just the difference there. But again, just an identification of how important it is to make smart decisions behind the wheel because of how many accidents happen. And then we'll click on all ages, and you'll see how it's heart disease is number one, and it's significantly higher than the next one as it goes down. And a stroke is obviously if someone has a blood clot, and that in some ways can be related to this, but really heart disease is something that is predictable and can happen over a long period of time. Usually we associate it with obesity and things like that. So going back to the PowerPoint here, and by the way, you can take a look at this and play around with that if you want some, just to see what the leading causes of death are. And it's interesting how some of the ages are different from others. Okay, so moving on to the next slide here. Why is it that motor vehicle accidents, and we hinted on that last time, and here's just some simple facts in regards to that. So 33, 1/3 of the deaths in this age range are due to motor vehicle accidents between 15 and 24. That's significant. Teens account for 13% of all fatal car accidents. 54% of them happen on the weekend, and then 42 between a certain time period that's down there at the bottom. And we can probably have an idea of what people are doing late at night or what they're doing on the weekends to make these poor decisions. You can probably figure that out. So why is it that all ages the number one killer is heart disease? Well, it's based off of two reasons. First, poor eating habits, and second, lack of physical activity. In regards to the first with poor eating habits, I'm going to have you pause here and watch a link that's on the next slide. It's from Mark Pittman. So I'm going to pause this and you can click on that and watch that video. All right, so now come back after watching that video, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but that can explain what he's already explained. But I do like how he really talked about how culturally what shifted since the earlier portion of the 1900s, how food was available, how it had to be transported, and how more readily available it is today. So if you need to go back and get some ideas to explain in your answer for tests, that's a great resource to get some answers from. I do want to go back in regards to what I talked about earlier on the leading causes of death. I wanted to point out a couple of interesting things that I kind of noticed when I was going through this. So I mentioned last class a disease that no longer is a major problem that would have been in the early 1900s was tuberculosis. So I'm going to click on 0 to 14 here. And these are a lot of this here has to do with birth issues here. So I do want to scroll down and notice all the way down here at the bottom, there's tuberculosis. There was one death in the United States that was caused by tuberculosis. And chances are, so this disease still exists, but chances are this person didn't have a vaccination for it. So something obviously that is no longer really a major problem, but does still exist. But so that's proof there. But the medicine has kept this at bay. So that was kind of interesting to kind of notice there. So I mentioned the leading cause of death was road accidents um, here at 15 to 24. If you go to 25 to 34, it's number two And if you go to 35 to 44, it's number 4. So interesting that in that age range, 15 to 44, that's there. Something else that's interesting is that suicide is rather high in those three as well. So it's third and 15 to 24 in your age range, third in the next one, and then it's still third all the way up to there. And then all of a sudden, when you get to 45, it drops off. So you'd have to scroll down a ways to actually find that. So kind of some interesting things. You'll start to see like breast cancer is number 1 here in 45 to 54. So that's really where that shows up. That's why a lot of times you'll start seeing women get more mammograms and things like that, especially in that age range or probably before that to kind of help prevent that from happening. And then you go up any higher, it starts becoming coronary heart disease and lung issues and all sorts of other deals there. So just some interesting things that you can kind of go back through there and peruse through that website if you'd like to. So in addition to that, I do have some other questions that I put on here, and I just wanted to talk about a couple other things. One other thing down here at the bottom. So just a theory on mental health issues. I have no proof backing this or anything like that, but I do kind of wonder if later in life that people start to have more mental health issues because their social activity has decreased significantly. If you think about your grandparents or great-grandparents, if they're still alive, the number of friends that they still have is minimal at best. And so and a lot of times in retirement, they tend to maybe keep more to themselves. And so that's just a kind of an idea, but something to think about. I don't know if that's actually true or not. I don't have any research behind that, but just a thought that I had. So what do we do with this information? We kind of went through some of that with what the leading causes of death are. What are you supposed to do with this information? And this next slide, I have kind of some ideas of things that you can do or things we can do to be more aware of this, choices that we can make. These leading causes of death, specifically in your age range and even in the entire age range of 0 to 100 with heart disease, in addition with motor vehicle accidents, there are choices that we have, things that are in our control. So obviously being more aware of them, we can create laws. There's so many different car things that are happening now with regard to lane assist, automatic stops, the Bluetooth in the car. There's so many different things. Shoot, Teslas are now coming out to where you can, it'll drive the car for you. You don't have to drive it. So all sorts of things are happening to lower the statistic. It's something that is a major problem and people want to fix. And in regards to the distracted driving with the texting, it's becoming more difficult without these new technological ideas. So those are there. Being more physically active, eating healthy, seeing a doctor. And then the last one, we're actually going to create one of these in this unit as a public service announcement. We'll get into more of that a little bit later. So there's 3 different causes of heart disease. As you put these on your definition sheet, if you haven't opened that up, you can go ahead and do that. The first one is going to be sedentary lifestyle. And I'm not going to go through and read each one of these. You can do that on your own. Really the type of life that you're leading, the habits that you have, the lack of opportunities to be physically active and things like that. So sitting down all day is a rather difficult thing to break, especially if you have a job like that, but that's something that you want to find a way. Somebody that has found a way to stand at their desk rather than sit, it's elevated, it would be a great example of turning it around. Obviously the second's poor eating habits. Eating until you're full rather than satisfied is a major contributor to this, but really a lot of the processed foods and the way that we eat food, the easy access to it, all of that's obviously there. And then the last thing is it could be other factors, and we'll get into how some of that may relate in regards to the other 6 of the 6 components of health. But there could be other things that are attributing to weight gain and lack of physical activity. It could even be an injury or something like that. Okay, so what is causing motor vehicle accidents? And a lot of people always just come up with the texting and driving. In the last class, I had you read an article that had to do with brain development in teenagers. So at the age of 25, your brain finally stops growing. It stops developing in regards to the size and how it really is going to need to be working. It's amazing how at the age of 25, you'll probably look back on how you thought and how you acted even at the age of 16, 17 years old, and maybe even laugh at yourself. So it's revolutionary what that kind of is. And it's interesting that insurance companies lower rates at the age of 25. I don't know if you're aware of that. Many of you even if you're not driving yet, when you start paying for car insurance, and it's rather expensive. So for example, if you have full coverage at your age, it's probably going to cost you somewhere in the range of $170 a month on a vehicle. But to have liability insurance, it might cost you $90 a month, something like that. And to compare that, I think now at the age mid upper 30s that I am, I'm paying probably around $65 to $70 for full coverage on a vehicle that I have. So that can kind of really give you some insight into how people trust other people in terms of driving vehicles and how they think of teenagers. It also bases it off of what type of car you drive. So, for example, if you drive a sports car, your car insurance is going to be higher because you're at a higher risk of damaging your vehicle and probably having a claim that an insurance company is going to have to pay out. So, young drivers are obviously the main cause. They take more risks, they speed, uh, they use alcohol, drugs. Your brain's in an altered state. You're more of a potential possibility for being a rebel, things like that. And then also, obviously, distracted driving. There's multiple things that could cause this, but a lot of the one that we usually go to is texting. I would tend to think that this back up here has a lot more to do with it. Time management issues. We run late all the time as a teenager. If you're running late, you're going to speed. It's generally the thought process that goes through our head. We wait until the last second before we need to get somewhere, and then all of a sudden we're in a hurry, and so we're just like, well, I'll make up the time. I'll just drive 10 miles an hour faster. And then we're looking on a rear view mirror, side mirrors the entire time to prevent a speeding ticket. So take it from somebody who's made that mistake many times. Just plan out your time ahead of time, and it reduces the amount of time that you speed significantly. It also reduces the amount of stress that you have. So really taking your time and using it wisely is a skill, and it's something that teenagers in general lack. It's also why parents, employers get frustrated with you at times because there's a lack of time management. Been there, been through it, but it doesn't mean that you have to be that way. All right, so kind of finishing up here on this video. So the other leading causes of death that are affected in all ages, but they're not necessarily the number one. Alcohol and drug use, we looked at that. This could be related to what those poisonings are. So I looked at one of those other ones, one of those other sheets. I'm trying to look back, maybe 25 to 34th. So there we go. We had poisonings here on that one, and that very well could be related to alcohol and drug use. And it could have the reasons for that as all sorts of things that I have listed there. STDs are a big one. It's something that has always existed, but those numbers are going up and up. There's more unprotected sex at an early age than there ever has been before. Tobacco use. So the number one preventable cause of death that we know of is tobacco use. It is very likely going to be overtaken by obesity, but this is one that people, 60, 70 years ago really didn't know the negative effects for it. And it's actually illegal now to advertise for cigarettes. You're not going to find a commercial about someone smoking and advertising Marlboro or anything like that. You'll have to probably see them in magazines, but definitely not on that. There's been regulations that our country has taken and put into effect of laws so that people are not allowed to have that, to promote that. There's even been taxes that have been added on, so it's more expensive than it ever used to be to actually buy a pack of cigarettes. So some things that our lawmakers and things have done for us to prevent us from doing that. All right, I'm going to take a break here. So there's going to be a second video in regards to this lesson to continue on, because I'm kind of running out of time to be able to post this one. But definitely some notes you can go back and review to add on to your definition sheet and other things like that. So to be continued.